Welcome back, everybody. Today's Friday, February 27th, 2026. Born on this date in 1886, U.S. Senator, U.S. Supreme Court Justice, and the namesake of the U.S. District Court in Birmingham, Hugo Black of Harlan. It's National Retro Day. Ironically enough, it's a relatively new observance, started by a couple folks who wanted to look way, way back to the days before TikTok and all that stuff. I'm celebrating by recording a podcast episode with Gunsmoke muted in the background. My fedora has a keen tilt. Today we're going to talk about open versus closed primaries, voter fraud indictments, and an Alabama forest open to drilling. I'm Mike Morgan, and we're down in Alabama. Could Alabama finally be heading toward closed primaries? Now, it could if U.S. Senator Tommy Tuberville has his way. If Alabama switches from open to closed primaries, it means that in order to vote in a party's primary, a voter must register as a member of that party. Currently, Alabama voters do not need to register with a party and merely ask for that party's ballot when they vote in the primary. AL.com's Mike Cason reports that Tuberville said he's spoken with Alabama House Speaker Nathaniel Ledbetter about it, and Ledbetter said he plans to bring it up with fellow Republicans who might sponsor a bill on it. It's not a new issue, though. The executive committee of the state GOP passed a resolution asking the legislature to close primaries in 2022. And acting state GOP Chair Joan Reynolds said the party's steering committee told lawmakers on Wednesday that closing the primaries is the Republicans' top priority. Now, a closed primary would make it less likely for someone who's really in the opposing party's camp from voting in your party's primary. And how often might that be happening? Well, Tuberville thinks it's happening enough that it's a real problem. He said he and Ledbetter agree that they, quote, have to do something about Democrats voting in our primary elections, end quote. Now, people have debated such crossover voting for years. There were reports of Democrats voting for John McCain against George W. Bush during the 2000 Republican primaries. And in 2008, talk radio host Rush Limbaugh launched what he called Operation Chaos, during which he directed conservative voters to cross over and vote for Hillary Clinton over Barack Obama, then later in the primary season to vote for Obama over Clinton. Now, that fired up conservatives and had progressives calling foul, but Limbaugh, who employed way more satire than most of his fans or foes realized, probably didn't make much of a statistical dent in that election. And also note that 8 years before, the McCain Democrats weren't very successful either. But that was on a much larger scale election. One might argue that it doesn't take quite as many votes to turn a state or local election. And should Democrats really be able to decide the Republican candidate? Some of the arguments on the other side in favor of open primaries are that primaries are publicly funded, that in a one-sided state like Alabama, the primary may be the only place a voter can have any say in an election, and that closed primaries are more likely to push candidates from both major parties further toward the extreme right or left. Now, the thinking on that last one is that if candidates don't have to consider independent voters or potential crossover voters, they're more likely to be able to openly wear their crazy and appeal to outlier voters in their own parties. Then, in the general, so the theory goes, you get two absolutely terrible candidates and wonder how it ever got to this point. Now, raise your hand if you can remember way back to such an election. Another option some states use to try and capture the best of open and closed primaries is the top two primary. In that, there's one primary ballot with all candidates of all parties listed, and the top two vote getters advance to the general election. The state attorney general's office announced 3 indictments on voter fraud charges, reports AL.com's Carol Robinson. The alleged crimes, ballot harvesting and unlawful use of absentee ballots, purportedly were related to last year's Frisco City municipal election in Monroe County. 3 women were charged with a total of 17 counts of ballot harvesting and 20 counts of unlawful use of absentee ballots. AG Steve Marshall said the women are accused of falsifying absentee ballot applications or verification documents and harvesting the ballots of multiple people. Now, ballot harvesting is a misdemeanor that can bring up to a year in jail. Unlawful use of absentee ballots, however, is a Class C felony, meaning the punishment is a year and a day up to 10 years in prison. Linwood Butler, the forest supervisor for national forests in Alabama, signed a notice of finding of no significant impact from oil and gas drilling in the Conecuh National Forest, reports AL.com's Margaret Cates. Now, what that means is this opens nearly all of that South Alabama forest to drilling leases. Now, that's not set well with environmental groups, and the Center for Biological Diversity and the Alabama Ornithological Society already filed an objection to the federal government's decision to change its evaluation process for leasing on national forest land. According to the Forest Service, somewhere around 11 wells will be drilled, affecting around 44 acres of the 83,000-acre Conecuh Forest. Its decision said that if drilling demand goes beyond those numbers, then the agreement will be reevaluated. It's not hard to figure the 2 most issued college car tags in the state of Alabama. From October 2024 through September 25, the University of Alabama easily led the way with 121,114 of its specialty tags being issued to the state's drivers. And I'll bet that ranks pretty high nationally. We need to look that up. You don't drive too far in Alabama without seeing one. Auburn's next, of course, with 85,709 issued during that same period. Now, obviously, it's going to fall off from there, but it gets a lot more competitive among these schools. Finishing in a strong third place is Troy University with 9,733 plates, followed in order by Alabama A&M, Jacksonville State, Alabama State, and UAB. So go show off your school's plates proudly, but remember, we see you driving, and we're judging your entire fan base. Hey, we hope to post another bonus episode this weekend, so you'll have that to check out either right away or it'll be waiting on you next week. And if you haven't yet, we'd love it if you left us a rating on whatever app you use. It puts us in front of more potential listeners, and we love that. Have a great weekend, and come see us whenever you can on the World Wide Web at al.com.